Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't remember everything that I learned in elementary school, in middle school, in high school, or in college. But I remember the teachers that had the greatest impact on me were the ones that I had the strongest relationships with, were the ones who invested in me, who took the time to understand who I am as a person, who I am as a learner, what motivates me, what inspires me. And so we know that relationships are a strong determining factor in kids' success. Especially when they get to a place where their parent isn't bringing them to school anymore, right? So in elementary school, someone is walking you to school or dropping you off. That's not the case in middle school. That's not the case in high school. And so it really...
This is Eric Almonte, Assistant Vice President for Capital Giving at Princeton University, and you are listening to EdUp Accelerated Excellence.
This episode of EdUp Accelerated Excellence is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, Nevada, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of EdUp Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EDUPXE15OFF. Check the show notes for more information or learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
This episode is supported in part by Patriox Ultra High Oxygen Content Water. Drinking Patriox helps oxygenate the body, promoting overall health, energy, and vitality. In 2026, try Patriox on your journey for accelerated excellence. Receive a 10% discount on your next purchase with the code EDUPXE. That's 10% off with the code EDUPXE at patriox.us. Patriox.us. Find more details in the show notes. Welcome to EdUp Accelerated Excellence, the podcast for the advancement of educational excellence and equity. And I'm your host, Jacob Easley II, PhD, PMP. And today's guest is a rock star of an educator leader. She is the Regional Superintendent of New York Elementary Schools at Achievement First. Achievement First is a charter school network, and so I think it's important in today's context to talk about school reform, and that is somewhat of a dated word, so we're going to update that lexicon during this episode. Really, it's about ensuring that schools that perhaps have had a history of not doing well thrive and achieve excellence at high levels. So, welcome to the show, Alicia Harper. Alicia, please introduce yourself to the EdUp Accelerated Excellence community by giving voice to your name. And if you could, just give us a sort of a high-level overview of Achievement First.
Thank you so much, Jacob, for having me on. I'm so excited to be in community with you right now and to just have a conversation about this really important work. As you said, my name is Alicia Harper, and I am the Regional Superintendent for New York Elementary Schools at Achievement First Public Charter Schools. And I've been in education for my entire adult life. I've been been 15 plus years in the game, and I know I don't look it. I don't look like I've been what I've been through, or that I've been doing this work. But for me, this is my life's work. It is a calling. It is a mission. It is very closely, deeply connected to my upbringing, and it's really, really important to me. And so that's why I continue to do it. A little bit about achievement first. We are a multi-state charter network, and so we have schools in Brooklyn, New York. We have schools in Queens, New York. We also have schools in Connecticut and in Rhode Island. And so we are a public K-12 school district, and we mostly serve in neighborhoods where there are lower resources, where there are majority Black and brown populations, and we just every day try to prove what's possible in education for all of our kids.
Alicia, thank you for that. And anyone who's met Alicia, you know that her energy is infectious. I really appreciate that. And you talked about this life work as your mission, and you've been doing this for more than 15 years, or about 15 years. So you are a native New Yorker. So, and you've shared with me openly that you grew up in New York City in foster care in the system, and you attended largely under-resourced schools. So what were those experiences like for you, and how did you navigate them in your own journey towards educational excellence?
Yeah, so fun story is I didn't actually major in education when I was in college. I majored in psychology. Well, initially I thought I was going to be a doctor, and so I was pre-med until I had to get to Orgo, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing this anymore. But I majored in psychology, and I had a minor in education. And when it came time for me to graduate, I knew that I wanted to just be a part of a solution, because as you said before, I grew up in Brooklyn, I grew up in New York. I went to 5 different elementary schools because I was in the foster care system, and I lived in different foster homes in elementary school, and depending on where you live, that you went to school in your neighborhood. One of the things that I noticed about all of the schools that I went to is, as an adult, I realized that we were grossly underfunded. There were just things that I saw in college, and that I saw people talking about their school careers, their school journeys, their public schools that they went to was very different than the school that I could describe that I went to. And so I knew that there was an issue. I didn't have words like ed reform. I didn't have words like educational equity. I didn't know all of those things at the time as an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old. But I knew that that something was wrong. And I knew that I wanted to be a part of the solution. I also thought a lot about if I came out of the public school system in New York, in the neighborhoods that I grew up in, and I got to college and I wasn't as fully prepared for the rigor that I was going to experience in college, I really thought about, then what about my peers? What about, the people that I consider like really close friends who became family, who did not go to, the schools that I went to, for the college that I went to, or who did not have an opportunity to be in the classes that I was in. And so I just knew that there was something wrong with the system, and I knew I wanted to fix it. And so that's sort of like how I landed here.
So, Alicia, thank you for that. And how did those experiences, you started talking about this, but how did those experiences shape your beliefs about how schools can, in a sense, show up for children, and especially those navigating instability or uncertainty? Because really, your story is a story of, and I don't want to say it in a way that sounds negative, but a story of a survivor in some ways from systems that many folks are not familiar with.
Yeah, that's so true. I think of when I was in elementary school. I'm aging myself now, but back then the classes were tracked. And so I was in it, and by tracked, I mean they put all of the kids that they sort of see as high potential in the top class of the grade, and all of the kids that they probably see as lower potential in the bottom classes of the grade. So that it's like, if I'm in 5th grade, 501 might be the top class, whereas 505 is the class that is the bottom class of the grade. And even within that system, I saw that there were disparity within resources, because in 501 we had we got to go on field trips. We had the teachers who would, we had textbooks that were newer if we got a new batch of textbooks that year, whereas in 505 that was not the case. So there are gaps within the gaps, and there are disparities within the disparities, first of all. So I would say that one of the things that I saw in terms of like, how can schools show up for kids and families that need it the most, is really understanding where that family is coming from, really understanding what are the challenges that's impacting families, what are the challenges that's impacting just getting kids to school. What are the barriers like that? And like, how can we work with families and not just like decide that we know what the issues are that they're facing and create these plans for them, but what does it truly look like to work with families and understand what a partnership is?
That's actually brilliant, because we often focus on teaching and learning, which is what's happening in schools between teachers and students and how school leaders can support it. But we have fewer conversations about the broader context, which means the family lives, and how do we extend teaching and learning beyond just what's happening in an individual classroom or school to those conditions outside of the school that support a child outside of that classroom or that building. So I think that's very important. So you have served as an assistant principal, a principal, and now a superintendent. What inspired you most about the work and those changes that you saw, or changes in demands across the different levels? So what inspired you at each level, if you could?
At each level, I'm really inspired by the kids. At the end of the day, this is why I do this work. I do this work so that our kids can have the education that they deserve. I think a lot about my younger self. I talk a lot about little Alicia on my social media, and this idea of there is a kid with so much promise and so much potential, and sometimes that gets tapped into and it gets cultivated and they are able to do really great things, and sometimes it doesn't. And until we get to a space where everyone has the opportunity and the access for their gifts to be really nurtured and cultivated, I'm not going to stop doing this work. And so like at the AP level, at the principal level, and now at the superintendent level, the thing that really drives me is the work for the kids. I think it's really easy to be at a superintendent level and not be in schools and not see the kids daily. I think also when I went from AP to principal, it's really easy to be in your office and to, just do the planning work, do all the things that need to happen behind closed doors. And I'm not saying those things aren't important. Those things are very, very important. But even now in my role as superintendent, even as a systems leader, I spend 4 out of my 5 days in schools doing school visits. So I'm usually at 2 different schools every single day. And when I'm in those schools, a portion of it is spent with my principal doing some coaching work, doing some development work. But the majority of my time is actually spent with my principals and APs in classrooms with kids, with teachers, doing the work alongside them.
So just out of curiosity, because I think this is a phenomenon for most of us who go into some leadership role, did it happen to you, or did you prepare for a leadership role? So how did that come about?
That's an interesting question. I was a 3rd grade teacher, and at the time, the 5th grade class, this one 5th grade class went through 3 teachers on that. And the 3rd teacher went to lunch and never came back. And so my AP at the time came up to me and she was like, hey, as of tomorrow, you're going to be a 5th grade teacher. And so I had to take over the class in the middle of the year. And what I learned in that process of dividing up my current kids, my 3rd graders, amongst the other 3rd grade classes, taking over this 5th grade class, essentially resetting the class so that we had systems and structures in place so that learning could actually take place. I actually had a little bit of resentment for my AP. And I was like, this is not the way you approach an adult and a teacher who has poured so much into a school. And if it needed to be that I had to take over the class, then fine. But the way you come up to someone and engage them in a conversation like that should not just be on a random, and I'm literally, because I remember this, it was a random Wednesday afternoon where she was like, as of tomorrow, you're going to be a 5th grade teacher. And so going from teaching to being an AP, I knew I wanted to do that because I felt like I could have a greater reach, a greater impact, and I felt like I could do it differently than how I was experiencing with my current leaders. And so that was something that I did pursue. I pursued the assistant principal role. While I was in the assistant principal role, and I was in that role for a number of years, at some point I began to prepare for principalship. There is a program at Achievement First called the Principal Fellow Program, and so I applied to that program, and I was a part of that program, and it's a pretty rigorous 2-year program that prepares assistant principals to step into a principal seat and take on the role of principalship. And so I did that program. Superintendent, I would say that was not a role that was yet on my radar. And so I was gently pushed or gently nudged into this role. I loved being a principal. And, if I could go back to being a principal tomorrow, I would absolutely do it. It was it's such a demanding job, but there's just something so special about creating a vision and seeing that vision come to life in every single classroom in your school, across kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, with all teammates. And that was really magical for me. But I did, I answered the call of stepping into the superintendent role because I do believe that it is a calling. It's not just a job. And now I'm able to work with schools across my district and just bring in a little bit of what I felt as a principal and what I was able to cultivate as a principal. And to me, that's really, really magical. And that's also really, really inspiring.
We definitely appreciate that. And so when you left from leadership of managing or leading a single school to overseeing a district, how did your leadership identity and decision-making mindset evolve? And I know you said you were nudged into it, which I can definitely relate to.
Yeah. So, I think that more than anything, I had to stay even more rooted and grounded in my values, in my standards, in my beliefs about what's possible for children. Because I'm not tooting my own horn here, but I was, my school was in turnaround when I took over. And I had a charge of turning around the school in 5 years. And we were able to do that in less than 3 years, where we went from the bottom of our district, like our proficiency was around 35%. And in the span of 3 years, we were able to get it up to 90% in math, in phonics, in writing. And so and that's a really great accomplishment. And it just really changes the trajectory of lives of our kids if 90% of them are able to do the things on grade level. And so when I stepped into this sort of like district seat. So the hat that I had to put on was the hat of what does it look like to scale? What does it look like to scale these results? What are the systems that need to be in place in order for all of our schools to achieve at that high level? What's the coaching that needs to be in place? What's the school visits that need to be in place? Like, what's the professional development that needs to be in place? Like, things like that. Like, what does it look to roll out a curriculum at a level with all schools as opposed to just one grade or one class or one school. So that's the shift that I had to make, is like thinking about from my building, we roll in together, to, oh no, we are all in this together. It's not just about my 400 plus kids. It's about the thousands of kids that we serve every single day. So that's the biggest thing that I would say, the shift that happened for me. But ultimately, I had to stand and double down on the things that I value, my standards, and my belief in what kids and adults deserve and what they can do, because I have found that those things are the things that get tested at this level.
I appreciate that. So you mentioned the word turnaround, and we, at the top of the show, we talked about reform, and we're going to get into that.
Thank you for listening to EdUp Accelerated Excellence. This episode is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of EdUp Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EdUpXE15OFF. Check out the details in the show notes or learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
This episode is supported in part by Patriox Ultra High Oxygen Content Water. Drinking Patriox helps oxygenate the body, promoting overall health, energy, and vitality. In 2026, try Patriox on your journey for accelerated excellence. Receive a 10% discount on your next purchase with the code EDUPXE. That's 10% off with the code EDUPXE at patriox.us. Patriox.us. Find more details in the show notes. And we're speaking with Alicia Harper, who is Regional Superintendent of New York Elementary Schools at Achievement First. And in an article, Achievements on Achievements First website, that article refers to you as the turnaround whisperer, highlighting how you build a school culture that teachers enjoy working in and students love to learn, and where students love to learn. Can you illuminate what is required for a successful school turnaround?
That's a throwback article. Yes, that is what they refer to me as. That's hilarious. What's required for a school turnaround success? That is a loaded question. I would say the things like grit and resilience is required, because that is the truth. Those things are required. I think one of the first things, though, that is required is this idea, this belief in what kids deserve and what kids can do, in what teachers deserve in a school that they work with, and what teachers are capable of doing, and a conviction to stand by that no matter what. Because I think if you have those two things, so many other things fall into place, right? Like if we take our first assessment, we're at 30% proficient. It is so easy for people, for leaders to be like, all right, I don't know what to do with this, or they did their best. But if you have a conviction around what kids can do and what they deserve, then that's not okay with you. And if you have a conviction around what teachers can do and what teachers deserve, then that's not okay with you, because you also know that your teachers are capable of more. And I'm not necessarily saying like do more work, work longer hours, come in on the weekends, but be more intentional. You have a belief around like what intentionality could look like. You have a belief around what your school schedule needs to look like in order for your teachers to have quality lesson planning meetings, in order for your APs to actually lead those meetings and do the development that's necessary for your teachers. So if there's anything that I would say is necessary, it definitely is that belief and that conviction. Now, there are also some tactical things that are required as well. There definitely needs to be lots of strategic systems and structures in place so that your teachers can grow at the rate that you need them to grow, right? There needs to be structures in place around coaching, around development, around how to prepare for lesson planning, around how often do APs go into rooms to actually observe teachers and coach them? And it can't be just like the beginning of year observation and then that like mid-year evaluation observation and end of year, because we're not going to get the growth and the traction that we need, the rate that we need it for kids. And so one of the things that I also had to do as a turnaround principal was build out systems and structures for my teams so that everyone got what they needed, and so that it can outlive me. I'm no longer the principal there, but those systems and structures are still in place, and they're still able to produce high results and really strong outcomes for kids because I was able to put those systems and structures in place years ago.
And out of curiosity, is that school within your network? Do you supervise that school as a superintendent today?
Oh, hell yeah. That was non-negotiable for me. I have it's a school that's very near and dear to my heart. I love this school down to my bones. And I still visit, obviously every week. I still go to like the parent events, the family events. The families, they still have my phone number. They'll text me things and updates about their kids. But it was definitely one of my personal requirements in stepping into this role.
I'm laughing with you because to anyone who's seen Abbott Elementary, this kind of reminds me of that Janine moment where she left her school and went to work in the district office, and that emotional tug that she had of wanting to go back to the school, help the school, but also how she would peek in on her classroom. So that brought to mind a clear vision of me of what that looks like. I guess, a bit of separation anxiety at times. So seems like you're doing really well with that. So you're not a Janine.
I resonate so much with that. The episode where she like goes back and like peeks into her classroom and just like sees like, oh, how are they doing and things like that, and why is this sub in here? I remember that so vividly. I'm more like have you ever seen the movie? If you've ever seen the movie Mean Girls, where the mom is videotaping while the girls are on stage doing their Christmas jingle, I'm more like that. Because every time I'm here, I'm just like videotaping or like, sending them like text messages like, yes, you guys are doing it. I'm so proud. I'm like a proud mom, but I mostly refer to myself as like their proud big sister. We also have a theme of Beyonce. Like we say, like, if you've ever been to a Beyonce concert, Beyonce, my girl, puts on for people and you do not leave the same. And so we have a theme at my former school where we have to give them Beyonce. We give our kids Beyonce. We give our parents Beyonce and all that. And so I always tell them, like, y'all are giving Beyonce, and I'm like a proud mama Tina out here.
I love that. So many Achievement First students are Black, Latinx, and from low-income families. And for many, college will be a first-time achievement in their families. How does the network define equity in this context?
That's a great question. And as someone who was also a first-gen college student, it's something that's very near and dear to my heart because there's just so much you don't know going into the process. It is a very, very challenging process, from picking schools, visiting schools, filling out applications, essays, scholarship information, financial aid, all of those things. I just remember doing it, and I remember not having anyone in my family that I could ask questions to. Luckily, I had a really great college advisor who was really deeply invested in me as a student and as a person. But one of the things that we do, because we know the challenges of being a first gen, is we really think about equity as how do we, one, remove barriers for people, and two, ensure that there is access and opportunity for people. And so some of the first things that we do when they are in high school is their AP classes are part of our curriculum in high school. So there are a certain number of AP classes that our high schoolers, they just take because it's a part of the curriculum. It's not because you are a wizard in, calculus or, in math, so now you're taking calculus. It's just like that's part of the trajectory. And we also see those things in other schools in more, in neighborhoods that are predominantly high income, right? We see that in Scarsdale, we see that in, just neighborhoods across the nation and across this state. And so we modeled our curriculum off of that. The other thing is that everyone does have a college counselor, college advisor, and they do work alongside the students and alongside their families as well. So it's not just education for the kids, it's education for the families in terms of like what to expect, what's the timeline. And we don't start that work in their senior year. We actually start that work freshman year. And then there is an addition to that in sophomore year, junior year, and so on and so forth. Every single year in high school, our kids get to take a college trip somewhere. And so like some of the seniors this year, they went on a tour of HBCUs, and it was an overnight trip. And so like they've gone to so many different schools, so many SUNY schools, HBCUs, and so many other schools just to learn, to see the campus, to learn about it. They also have someone supporting them through scholarships that might be scholarship applications that might be a really good fit for them. So when we think about equity, we think about removing barriers for our kids, and then we also think about defining opportunity and access for them.
And you mentioned a word earlier about intentionality. So could you speak to the design logic of the network for holding high expectations while providing support for students and helping them to meet those expectations? So I like the story around those students who are pursuing the path towards college, but you may have students who may not be in that camp. So for across your population of students, what is the design logic, intentional design for holding high expectations?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So like in terms of like coursework, everyone they do have there's a certain amount of credits that you need. With high school, there's a certain amount of regents you got to pass to get your diploma. And so those things are a part of achievement first, but it's also just a part of New York City and being a high schooler in New York City. And so we have that system in place. For kids who, we figure out by the time they're maybe like sophomores or juniors that they do not want to go the route or the path of going a traditional like 4-year school or 2-year school. Then there is some CTE work that they're doing. There's some like we have a small number of our students that do go into trade schools, and they are able to get the support and the guidance that they need in order to be successful in those areas.
And for those who may not be familiar with Regents or CTE, can you just share a brief overview of the Regents process and CTEs?
Yes, I completely forgot. I'm thinking just like a New York type thing. Yes, so Regents is a it's kind of like a final of a final. So it's a test that every New York state kid has to take different for different subjects. They have to have a certain number of Regents credits in order to meet the requirement to graduate. And so there might be Regents for ELA, and then there's a math one, and history, and so on and so forth. And so all of New York State high schoolers have to meet that requirement in order to graduate. And so we have that. We have Regents Prep, we have classes that prepare scholars for their Regents, and so on and so forth. When I say CTE, that acronym stands for Career and Technical Education. And so if there is a student who is not interested in college, the answer can't just be, okay, good luck, right? Because that is a disservice to that kid. That is a disservice to that family. And that's doing the opposite of what we promise to kids and families. So what we do, if they are not interested in college and that's not the path that they want to take, is that we support them in exploring different CTE options.
Yep, that's exactly, we used to call that vocational ed back in the day. So Achievement First emphasizes that teachers are not just instructors, but mentors and role models for their students. And I think that sort of lends itself to the idea of supports and high expectations. How does the network intentionally cultivate mentorship among teachers? And why do you see teacher-student relationships as the most powerful lever for long-term student success?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't remember everything that I learned in elementary school, in middle school, in high school, or in college. But I remember the teachers that had the greatest impact on me were the ones that I had the strongest relationships with, were the ones who invested in me, who took the time to understand who I am as a person, who I am as a learner, what motivates me, what inspires me. And so we know that relationships are a strong determining factor in kids' success. Especially when they get to a place where their parent isn't bringing them to school anymore, right? So in elementary school, someone is walking you to school or dropping you off. That's not the case in middle school. That's not the case in high school. And so it really not only determines their success, it determines like how often they come to school. We know that chronic absenteeism is now the buzzword in education across the nation as we're making gains in attendance from COVID, but the relationships are the thing that makes kids want to come to school and allows kids to be invested in school, because I might not like algebra, right? Like I might not like bio, but I am invested in my teacher because I know my teacher is invested in me, and my teacher believes in the possibility of and my teacher believes in what's possible for me.
Yeah, it's sort of that influential leadership, and you want to make your teacher proud in some ways. So you often will push a little further. And so I really appreciate that. And the reality is that student or student-teacher relationship carries through not only in P-12 but also in higher education. So outside of high-quality advisement, that's probably the second most influential factor in student success is the relationship they have with their instructors.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm aligned to that.
Drawing on your experiences, let's dream together for a bit if you don't mind. If you were to develop a school or a school system from the ground up, what would that school or district look like in terms of teaching and learning experiences that would define the unique value of that organization? So you can either choose it from the level of, again, principal. I know you have a soft spot for the principal's role, but also as a superintendent.
Ooh, this is a juicy question. I am definitely a dreamer, so I love it. I love this question. When I think of the ideal school, it would definitely be a school where joy and learning, joy and rigor coexist. It would be a school that's a lot of hands-on things, not just pencil to paper. There we go. But really building things, right? And designing things. And kids can really own their learning in a way that feels like it's not just top down, my teacher telling me to do something, but I have created this great thing and I can present it to the world. And by world, I mean their class or their school. it's a school that not just have like really strong academic systems in place, but also that has really great extracurricular activities in place for kids. Boys clubs, girls clubs, people clubs, just swimming, soccer, basketball, just acting, dancing, all of those things are fine arts, so that kids can really learn to blossom and bloom even outside of the classroom. One of the things that I saw so much as a principal, I was a principal in Bushwick, Brooklyn, New York, and that is a school that has, that's a neighborhood that has a high newcomer population and high bilingual population. And one of the things that I realized as a principal was that there are places that our kids can shine that while they're still developing the language of English. So they may not have been, comfortable or felt comfortable speaking in their classroom, but put them in a dance studio and they just, blossomed. And that also supported them when they were back in the classroom. So I would definitely have a school that included so many extracurricular activities. I think a lot about access. I think a lot about opportunity. And if when I think about like schools on, let's say, like the Upper West Side of Manhattan, they have those things in-house, but then there are also so many programs after school that are available for kids that also are very expensive. And so if I had a bunch of money, I would have those things in schools that are in lower resource neighborhood and make those things free for our Black and brown children, because that is what they deserve.
I thank you for that. And as you begin to talk about this dream of building a school or district, in this case, a school from the ground up, I forgot to add, and resources were not a limitation. So I think that would definitely shape someone's dreaming in a different direction, because as you mentioned earlier, your experience has been as a student, but then working with turnaround schools, often resources are strained.
Yeah, so absolutely. And you're spending a lot of time figuring out where do I put the resources, right? What is going to give us the biggest bang for our buck? What does the community need the most?
Yeah, and that's also one of the tough parts of being a leader when you have limited resources. Now, how then do you prioritize in order to achieve the results you want? So schools may not feel, and you're still trying to, as you say, mention this joy. I guess it could put a strain on even what joy feels like, not only for students, but for you as a leader, knowing that your students would benefit from certain opportunities, but not necessarily having the resources to make those available.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I agree. I think I'm on a mission to redefine joy in schools, also because I think that joy is not only something that can exist during like fun time or free time during recess. It also should exist in the learning. The learning is the joyful part as well. In reading a book that reflects back who I am, right? In learning about myself, in literature, in math, in science, and so on and so forth. That is really, really joyful.
So, Alicia, for educators listening, and I'm going to amend that. I'm saying educators, but those who may also consider going into education. So what would you say to aspiring teachers folks who want to go into teaching? And then secondly, what would you say to aspiring leaders? What advice would you give to them leading with both urgency and humanity? And so that's two parts. I'm not sure if the answer is the same, but I'm going to let you use your discernment and what advice you might give folks.
Yeah, I would say like for both the teachers and the leaders, be grounded in that we're here for kids, that we need to do things that are best for kids. And it doesn't have to look like a teacher, what's best for teachers versus what's best for kids. It doesn't have to be a battle, that tension, either or. It can be both and. So that's one thing that I would say. The thing that I would say for people who are entering into education is find your school that is the school that you envision thriving in, because I sometimes I'll see that someone goes to a school and they're like, oh, this is hard. I don't have the support that I need. I don't have insert whatever the thing is that they need. And they give up on education because of that. And it doesn't have to be like that. There are so many schools out here in just in New York City. There are so many schools, and so find the school that is closest aligned to who you are as a person, to your vision, to your mission, and to what you need to thrive. Because it exists. It's there. Hold on to that optimism. To leaders, I would say that to understand that when you step into a leadership role, you are not just the person responsible for the results. You are, and that is a burden to carry, and it's heavy. But you're also responsible for the people responsible for the results. And don't lose sight of that. Don't lose sight of the fact that you have now been called to support the people, to invest in the people, to nurture the people so that they can get really great outcomes for our kids. I do sometimes think that sometimes leaders forget that. And that's where the magic lies.
So we're speaking with Alicia Harper, who is Regional Superintendent of New York Elementary Schools at Achievement First. And Alicia, we know this is your first ever podcast, and we appreciate that you have entrusted EdUp Accelerated Excellence to venture into this world of podcasting, to tell your story and to shine a light on some of the great work that's happening at Achievement First. And if you would, could you give us insights into what's next for Achievement First, or for some projects you might be working on, and how might the EdUp Accelerated Excellence community engage with that work?
Yeah, great question. I'll first start with what's next for Achievement First. So we just did some restructuring in our network. We, as I shared earlier in the episode, we were a charter network across 3 different states. So in New York, Connecticut, and in Rhode Island. And so what's next is we have decided to regionalize. And so we are in a space where we are able to really give each state the things that they need, depending on the unique needs of each region and each state, which is, I'm just really excited to see what comes next because of that. For me, as a person, as an educator, I am on a mission to just expand my impact, both within the AF network and also outside of my my charter network. And so I, want to continue mentoring, continue coaching, and working with educators just outside of this beautiful charter network that I'm in. This is the first time I'm sharing this, but I most recently started an LLC. I formed an LLC, and I'm working on a website. It's called Harper Haven, and it's going to be a space for turnaround school leaders to just have a ton of resources that they might need to be able to do the very hard work of turning school and school systems around. And so I'm really excited about that. And I'm really excited that I get to share that with you first.
Well, thank you. Again, lots of trust here. I love it.
Yeah, so we have so many exciting things happening at Achievement First, and so you can always go to our website, www.achievementfirst.org. If you are an educator, if you are a teacher, if you're an aspiring teacher or leader, we always have positions available and open, and so we welcome people who agree with our values and want to do this great work of educating kids. You can also, in a few weeks, I will have my website up, but in the meantime, you can always find me on LinkedIn and just engage with the commentary, with the posts, send me some DMs if you have any questions about any turnaround work or just school leadership work.
Alicia, Harper, thank you for this opportunity to learn with and from you here at EdUp Accelerated Excellence, where we seek to advance educational excellence and equity.
Thank you so much. I'm so appreciative of you, Jacob, and the entire EdUp community. And I'm just ready to continue doing this work.
Thank you for engaging with EdUp Accelerated Excellence, a member of the EdUp Experience network of educational podcasts. You can find this and other episodes on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Radio, YouTube, and other outlets where you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like this episode, don't forget to follow us and share within your network. To leave a comment or suggest a guest, contact us online at edupxe.com.
A special thanks to our research assistant, Emma Worthington, a PhD student of Fordham University's School Psychology program. And we want to hear from you. If you have feedback on this or other episodes, or would like to nominate a guest, contact us online at edupxe.com, where you can leave an email or a voice message. That's edupxe.com.